The toughest thing is to fire people that don't belong to your company. Jack Welch, he had that matrix where you have values and you have numbers. The people who give you a number, but they do not align with the values of the company. So that people you need to fire, plain and simple.
They say it's lonely at the top. They're right. But you don't have to scale your company alone. Welcome to the Scaling CEO. I'm Glenn Gow, the CEO Success Coach. On this podcast, I sit down with top-performing CEOs to uncover the hidden patterns and frameworks behind their success so you can avoid common pitfalls and accelerate your company's growth. Now, on to the show. Today, we're going to talk about scaling from a completely different perspective. What if the office you're scaling, the very building your team works in, is making them sick? Our guest is Allan Lopes, a biologist turned founder and CEO who's disrupting the global construction and real estate industries. He's the founder and global director of the Healthy Building Certificate, a company on a mission to change the way we think about our physical spaces. Allan's core belief is simple but revolutionary. Health starts at home and in the office. He's a specialist in mitigating sick building syndrome and has scaled a global business by proving that health of our people and the health of our buildings are directly linked to performance and profitability, which I am a big fan of. I truly believe in that. For any CEO focused on scaling their team and their company, Allan brings a critical, often overlooked perspective on how our environment directly impacts our ability to grow. Allan, it's great to have you on the show.
Wow, it's great to be here too, Glenn. Thank you very much. It's very nice being here with you.
So let's dive right in. You began your career as a biologist, not a CEO. Now you're running multiple companies and scaling a global, healthy building movement. That's not a typical career path. What was the specific moment you realized that the only way to solve the problem of sick buildings was to build and scale a company yourself?
That's a great question, because I was a scientist, by biologist, all the time into universities, university professor and all of that. But when I actually started doing what I do, I was a consultant for healthy buildings. So I would teach at universities, very academic part of it, but then we would hold like congresses. So I held in Brazil. I'm originally from Brazil. So in 2006, I hosted the first international congress on building biology. That was
Biology.
building biology is the science behind all of this. So everything that we do in offices and homes to make people more productive, basically the very fast, and then I'll go back to your question. The premise is that a function, whatever that is, to work, to sleep, to have a good time with your family, needs to happen in an environment that fosters that. That is the premise. So, and then you can fine tune each environment, each place for that function that you want. So if you want a meeting room, then you need certain lightings and acoustics and things to make that happen. If you need something else, if you want to sleep, then it's a completely different set of values that you need to implement in that place so that you can get that function working. So going back to your question, so the building biology is the science that is behind this, that we're looking, into buildings from a biology, medical perspective and seeing, okay, if I have too much light, then that person, or if I have too little light, that person cannot think well. The prefrontal cortex doesn't have enough oxygen and things like that. So that function is not going to happen very well. So that was the kind of congress that we were holding, right? Very technical, very, very scientific. Then we did another one in 2008. And by then, we were seeing the movement of sustainability growing. And with that movement, unfortunately, also the greenwash, which was a lot of companies and certification processes happening that actually did not address the problem of sustainability, and sometimes would address, but with decrease in human efficiency, because a lot of the things that we do today, like sealing buildings so the buildings can be more energetically efficient, it's actually counterproductive when you're talking about human beings. And then in those congresses, we were discussing, like, God forbid if we ever have a pandemic, because if we have a pandemic in the future, we are also going to have a lockdown, because all of these sealed buildings, they're going to be traps for viruses and everything else. But then in 2012, we held the third International Congress. And in that Congress, it was very clear that the academic world was not going to take it. We were not going to be able to actually go ahead and solve real problems. We were solving problems in our heads and in our little world. But I was younger than I am today. And I had that energy, like, I really want to do something in this world. I really want to make a change. And I thought that I would be able to make a change in the academic world. But I eventually found out that we're not making progress. We're just running around our tails all these years. So 6 years we've been talking about this and we haven't done anything. So then I was like, why don't we actually create a certification process? Create a backbone so that every engineer, every architect, every general contractor know what does a healthy building need, and then we go about and make that happen. And then people, elderly people at that moment. Now I'm just as old as them. They're like, no, we don't want to deal with the business part of it. I was like, all right, I'll deal with the business part of it. And then Healthy Building Certificate was born.
Excellent.
I didn't know anything about business. I still don't, but I didn't know anything about business back then. That was 10 years ago.
Well, so you are scaling what I call a philosophy centered on the idea that health starts at home. So you're selling a mindset shift, and that's infinitely harder than selling software.
Absolutely.
As you look back at the growth of HBC, what's the single biggest scaling insight that if you knew it then would have saved you months of pain and frustration?
More and more education. We do education a lot, but I always thought that people would get that instantly. But our biggest competitor is lack of knowledge. So we need to educate everybody about this in a more direct level. We were always like educating engineers and architects.
Right.
If I went back 10 years ago, I would be talking to more CEOs than with architects. I would be talking more with household owners, with the husband and the wife, more than their architects. Because eventually we found out, and we are making that shift for the last 2 or 3 years, based on research, on data that we gather throughout the years. We understood that around 70 to 75% of all of the technical people that got in contact with us, they did so because their client, which was the CEO or the mom or the dad that were concerned about their company or their children, they were the ones who heard me or somebody from my company somewhere, and they were like, wow, I really want that in my company. Like big companies, like one of the biggest companies that we have as a client, even before HBC was born, when I was a private consultant, it's called Natura. Natura is the biggest Brazilian cosmetic company. And about 3 or 4 years ago, they bought Avon, which is a big cosmetic company from the United States, and The Body Shop, which is, I think, originally from the United Kingdom. So the Brazilian company owns Avon and also they own this big company in Australia too. They're a big conglomerate, and they have always been keen about this. Ever since the first time I spoke with the founder of that company, he was like, Allan, that makes total sense. I want that in Natura because I want my people to perform their best. And that is part of Natura culture. So then I started implementing changes in Natura's buildings, and then I started, every new building I would start early on with the designers so that we could have. By 2017, we actually inaugurated a state-of-the-art building in Brazil that holds 8,000 people. Like we have a glass roof with a central aisle so that we can have natural light going to everybody. Lots of gardens I see behind you, and I commend you for having a plant inside. Yeah, but we have lots of plants there. Plants, they're amazing for increasing productivity and things like that. We can dive into that if you want to later. But but my point in bringing Natura is that it came from the CEO. The CEO understood that, then he commanded the technical team to go about and implement that, right? So if I was to go back 10 years ago, I would talk more to the final users and less with the technical people.
Right. So we combine those first two answers, and one is a lot more education, and then a lot more education to the ultimate decision makers.
Exactly. To the client, when you're talking about business, this is a lesson I had to learn as an entrepreneur, as opposed to a scholar, which is you need the demand from the market. If you don't have the basics, right? Basics. If you don't have a demand, then you don't have a business. That's right. As the researcher, you can go about it like, hey, I want to research this. That's fine. Get some funding. There you go. But if you want to run a business, if you don't have a demand, so then you don't have a business.
That's right. That's right. No product market fit.
Yep.
So I was struck by something you said at HBC. You said you changed the way buildings are conceived and constructed by putting people first. So I want to ask you a challenging question here. How does that people first principle guide how you scale your own team? So tell me about a time you had to make a hard choice between faster organizational growth and the well-being of your own people.
I don't think I was ever put in that position. I always put other people in that position because sometimes, they come when I'm involved in a project or my team is involved in a project, and then obviously budget is always a problem. It's like, okay, so we have this budget to build this new room or to build this new facility or everything. And then now you're proposing us to do this and this and this, and this will cost us 10% more. So it doesn't always cost more, right? I'm just saying one of the occasions where it costs more. And then I'll be like, okay, how much is that into your yearly payroll? So how much is your payroll? Oh, so my payroll is $10 million a year. And here we are building a thing that's going to cost you $1 million, and 10% on top of that is $100,000. So you are putting in danger $10 million budget because of 100,000
For 1%. Yeah.
for 1%. And that is on material, and your most valuable asset for any company is your people. That's right. The better the people, the better the outcome you have. That's a very simple equation. So that's me putting people into that position. But as far as our team, I always took care of the spaces before bringing people in, or that was never a concern for me.
Okay. All right. Good. You're very fortunate. A lot of
In that case, yeah, I had other moments, but it was not related to your question. Of course, we went into big problems, and we still go into big problems just like any other company, but wasn't related to your question.
Okay. All right. Now I want to give you what I think is my most challenging question. How's that? All right, dude. So many CEOs I work with feel like they're struggling inside of I'll call it a sick company, meaning there might be a toxic culture or some toxic people. There might be some broken processes, especially high growth companies have broken processes, or they're just not growing and they feel stuck. What advice would you give a CEO who needs to diagnose and heal their own unhealthy business to get it ready for scale?
Yeah, well, then we're talking about business and not the environment. The toughest thing is I'm going to be blunt. The toughest thing is to fire people that don't belong to your company. Jack Welch, of course, you know him. He had that matrix where you have values and you have numbers, right? And then, of course, you want people that deliver numbers but are aligned with your values. That's very easy to keep. And the hard people to fire is the people who give you a number, who actually have productivity in whatever area they have, but they do not align with the values of the company. So that people you need to fire, plain and simple.
I am so glad you said that. I won't call this the most common scenario, but a common scenario I see is the head of sales is bringing in the numbers,
There you go.
right? They're successful when we measure them on the numbers, and yet somehow, some way, and not all cases, of course, but they're toxic.
Yep.
And people don't like working with them. The marketing team doesn't want to work with them. The product team doesn't like what they hear. The sales, customer success team doesn't like what that person has done. And so as a CEO, it's a real struggle because I'm measured based on usually revenue improvement. And yet I'm enabling this person who doesn't match our values to be here.
And you're going to be cutting on the flesh. Yep.
Yeah. And so you pointed out, I think, a real challenge for a lot of
of course, depending on the company, if the company is open in the stock market, that's a completely different set of values and understanding. But if it's a closed capital company, people, they are your most valuable asset. And if you have a guy that you just described, maybe you need that guy for that quarter or for that year. So maybe you do a calculated, turnover of that person.
Right.
But the sooner you can get rid of that person that don't belong, because it's not only bad for you or your company, it's bad for that person too, because there might be a place where that person fit, and they are wasting their time, their purpose in life, where they could be in another place where their talents could blend with whatever that other company's culture is.
That's right. That's right. The other thing I found is that this misalignment in values, let's call it this person being toxic when that's not part of the culture, impacts everybody in the company.
Absolutely.
And everybody's watching you, Allan, as the CEO, and saying, how long is he going to put up with this bullshit? And
the worst,
And-
nobody's going to tell you.
yeah, and if he's putting up with it, then I can be that way too.
Yep.
Right.
And the worst thing is that nobody's going to tell you. As a CEO, you don't get right here. People don't. So even if I like to talk to everybody. I think I'm very approachable, but people, they just have a barrier to talk to people who are higher in the hierarchy. I try not to have that kind of culture in my company, but it's just natural to people like, I'm not going to say anything, I don't know how good friends Allan is with that person, so they just hold back that valuable information that they don't like, but that person is toxic. So it's very, very complicated if you don't act. Of course, you have to give second chances to people, but after that, there's a moment when that has to stop, and then you have to, just do what needs to be done. Not always numbers.
Yeah, it's one of the harder decisions.
Yeah.
Okay, so last question for you. So let's look forward and let's put AI on the table. And we're going to acknowledge it's becoming exceptional at analyzing complex dynamic systems like buildings or businesses themselves. So how will AI change your approach to creating healthy buildings? And looking longer term, how will it change the way you think about scaling your company?
Oh, it is already changing. We already incorporating it. I'm very, very positive about what is already happening with AI and with what's coming. And my take is that AI will eliminate mediocrity.
Talk more about that.
Because my understanding is, for any profession, a professor, a teacher, a doctor, anything, before any mediocre professional, they would go by because we needed them. Let's say an accountant to talk business language.
Right.
So a regular kind of okay accountant, you needed that guy because he knew more than you, but he wasn't an excellent accountant,
Right.
and he was better than an intern, right? So he was right there in the middle, and he allowed himself, like, you know what, it's good for me. It's okay. I don't need to push myself. I don't need to excel, but I also don't want to go down and have a lower position. But he would do a bad job, and that's the majority of people, unfortunately. So we are gonna have a big revolution. So what's gonna happen is that either people who excel will really excel because AI is going to be an incredible, and it's already is in our company, already is an incredible company, a tool to go over very basic daily stuff that just take our time away. And then we can be more together. We can be more humans. I don't have to write after a meeting. I don't have to write, everything that happened in the meeting.
Right.
We record it, we put it into ChatGPT, it brings, everything we need. That's very nice. We program that one time, that's done. And technical things too, like the way we analyze buildings was very time consuming. We analyzed every single paint, every single glue, every single thing that go in the building. But it's a very technical thing.
Right.
With AI, boom, they're doing it for us, and then we have to put the human part on it, which is actually overlook how to do the process. So we're loving it. So either you're going to excel and become more human, and we're going to become superhumans, or if you want to be in the middle, there won't be any space for you in the middle, because the middle will be taken by AI. Then you have to go to the lower end of your chain, whatever that is.
I love that. I don't know if you said this exactly, but this is what I thought I heard, that AI is actually going to help us be more human because we're going to have time to spend with the other humans. Absolutely. Do this drudgery work.
Yeah, absolutely. You're 100%.
I had never heard that phrase before. That's really good.
I think so. I think AI is gonna, just imagine, AI is just. I don't see AI as a revolution. I see it as an evolution. Think about the real revolution was the industrial revolution, because that's what actually started the process where we are today. That's so you could have, washing machines so that people don't have to spend 3-4 hours a day washing the clothes. Something like that. So that is the beginning of everything. And AI is, of course, it's the apex of that for now, but it just releases the time for us to be more humans. And humans are what humans are. We call ourselves the Homo sapiens, but we don't are too sapiens, as much as we wanted to.
Well, Allan, thank you so much. I've learned from our review, which is what I love about doing this podcast. And I really appreciate your time. Tell us how people can reach you if they would like to reach out.
Thank you for inviting me. It's been a pleasure this time here with you. People can reach me at LinkedIn, where we talk a lot. Just Allan Lopes with an S, ALLAN LOPES, or on our website, hbcertificate.com. H for health, B for building, certificate.com. And I'm going to have a personal website maybe in a month or so called homeandpurpose.com.
Well, so Home and Purpose?
Home and Purpose, just to make it easy. Yeah, it's a more humane website, less technical, more approachable. So homeandpurpose.com.
Fantastic. Well, Allan, thank you so much. I really appreciate you.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
That's a wrap for today's episode of The Scaling CEO. If you found this valuable, be sure to like, subscribe, and share with a fellow CEO who could benefit. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please give us a quick rating, as it really helps more people find the show. I'm Glenn Gow, the CEO Success Coach. See you next time for more proven strategies to grow your business and leadership.